So, you want to learn how to draw from a reference, but you just don't know how to start. Well, hello! I'm YannaTryz, and today I will be going through a step-by-step guide on how I like to reference from drawings. I use a resource called Line of Action. I'm not sponsored, but if you're like me and use Pinterest a lot, I'd rather recommend you to use Line of Action because then you could find more specific things from figure drawing, animal drawings, and be timed. First of all, I highly recommend drawing on your reference. And I don't mean exactly tracing everything you see. Here, what I am doing is I'm breaking them into simple shapes. And this gives me a better view of what to look for when I'm drawing this girl. When drawing from a reference, I don't want you to see it as a person. Yes, we know that this is a girl. However, I want you to just only see it from shapes, from a shape and line and form perspective, seeing that there's a tilt there from where her pelvis is by noticing that the balance, her left foot is carrying her entire weight right now. Okay, first thing, determine how big you want your silhouette to be compared to the reference. A lot of times you might be drawing it bigger or smaller. It doesn't matter, but I suggest putting a couple lines. Also, I just noticed I made a mistake. I made her head too big, and that's because I was focusing too much on the details. Even just by adding that little bit of hair and ear, it made me neglect the fact that she's a silhouette. And I suggest, in order to find a good pose, see what the shadow looks like. If you know what the pose is from the shadows, then that means it's really good. Another thing, I realize her back isn't fully square, and I see a really nice shoulder blade there that I want to include, as well as drawing out her elbow. Another thing is, do you notice how shaky my lines are? That shows that I'm lacking line confidence, which it's fine in the beginning stages of a sketch, but since I am actually outlining, my lines should not be this shaky. Alright, drawing hands. A lot of people, like me included, struggle with drawing hands, and that's because a lot of times in drawing hands, I don't see it into shapes when you should. Trapezoid for the palm, and breaking the fingers into 3 different segments. Bam! And then just whoop, and there you go. I also want you to know I'm looking at my reference a lot. In fact, you should be constantly looking back at your reference. What is she wearing? What does it look like? Please look at your reference. Don't just treat it as the photo, treat it as like your lifeblood, because this is what you're drawing based out of. Of course, if you're trying to merge several references into one drawing, you don't have to over rely on it. Put your own spin, put your own pizzazz. However, since I'm drawing directly from my reference, I want to try and make it as accurate as it possibly can. I will warn, sometimes when you're drawing and you look at a reference for too long, you start like hating it because you're like looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's the same thing. But you notice that it's there to help guide you, and you should treat it as a guide. Kind of hypocritical, especially since of what I said previously, but it's okay. Okay. Now with values. If you are using a colored reference like me, I would suggest if you don't know your values that well, please just put on a color filter on it, make it black and white, see what you're missing. I suggest when drawing, make sure that you put down your darkest values first. It gives you a better understanding of where the shadows are. Also, I'm abusing the blur tool like crazy right now, the blur and smudge tool, but I will go back to fix it, so don't start getting on me right now, okay? Now, what I'm simply doing is I'm putting more emphasis on what I see. For example, with the shoulders and with the arm, as well as I'm thinking about where the light source is, which is directly in front of her face, which is why her back is so dark compared to everywhere else. If you struggle with values, trust me on this, squint. Squint right now and look at the reference I'm currently using. Do you notice how her hair and the clothes that she's wearing is the darkest part, as well as the rest of her body usually being the lightest? Right now, what I'm doing as well is I'm blurring my outlines and edges, because one thing about realism is the fact that not everything is in a solid outline. Usually with anime or cartoons, you'll see a solid black outline, but for real life, wherever it hits the light the most, a lot of times has a more blurry effect compared to the darkest parts of the shadow. And right now, as you can see, I'm blurring certain muscles that I find to be important. But also, keep in mind that when you are doing this, notice what parts should have a soft edge or a hard edge. For example, the muscle that I'm currently targeting, which is the back part of her, the parts where I have light, I make that really soft. But when it comes to the dark, I tend to make one part really, really hard with the other one using a blur tool to make that softer. And this is the final product. I know that it isn't perfect, but this was used to hopefully teach you guys a couple things of what I like to do. And well, make sure if you like this video, subscribe. That's all for today. Yanna out.